Hello and welcome. You are listening to an episode of the Sales Chat Show. To stream or download a host of further free episodes that will power your sales success, please visit saleschatshow.com. We really hope that you enjoy and benefit from this episode. So, hello folks, and welcome to another episode from the Sales Chat Show, saleschatshow.com, driving your sales success. Now, as regular listeners know, we are starting to phase in some interviews with some movers and shakers in the world of sales that we think have got interesting things to share with our listeners. And that's the reason I'm joined in the Sales Chat Show studio today by James Barton, who is Chief Solutions Officer from an organisation called Mentor Group. Now, for reasons of disclosure, I should say I've been working with Mentor for quite a long time. And now that's not the reason James is on the podcast. The reason James is on the podcast is because I think he's got some really interesting views, as I've said, to share. So, James, do you want to say hi to the Sales Chat Show listeners and just let us know kind of what you do and how you got into doing what you're doing?
Yeah, thanks, Simon, and great to speak to you all. I'm very honoured. I don't think I've ever been called a mover and shaker before, so I'm quite honoured to have that label. Thank you, Simon. As you say, James Barton. I'm the CSO for Mentor Group. Now, CSO, Chief Solution Officer, not Chief Sales Officer, which can get confused. And often, because I often buy the sandwiches at work, Chief Sandwich Officer, but solutions is what I do. So what my responsibility is to look at the world of sales and sales training, because that's what Mentor Group do, and look to find ways that we can better use technology to deliver great sales training. Now, how I got here, well, I'm originally trained in HR, so my background and my qualifications is all in HR. But then I moved quite quickly into technology, and from technology I was part of the Premiership Football Club, and then got involved in some rather interesting work around travel and safety, which negotiation training became very different when it was hostage negotiation over sales negotiation. But a similar principle: you still don't practice with your customers. Number one rule, right, with negotiation. Yeah. And joined with Mentor Group and have been here for well over a decade, which is quite exciting. Obviously, I've worked with you quite a lot during that time, Simon. So thanks for having me on.
Great to have you. And although I've done a fair bit of negotiation in my time commercially and run a lot of negotiation workshops, don't think a fancy hostage kidnap negotiation. That seems like the stakes are a bit high. So, and so like you say, you're keeping your eye on the world and you're keeping your eye on the horizon. Right. So I guess the real first question will be around what are some of the key developments in, say, technology, AI, etc., that are contributing to new ways of looking at sales training?
Great, and it's a question that's got many answers to it because it depends on where you sit. Now, what I have to do is I've looked at the full gamut. Now, it's been if I say out the word AI, everyone sighs and rolls their eyes. Everything's AI powered. Everything's AI powered. And what we saw probably 4 or 5 years ago was the beginnings of AI-powered learning journeys, which is quite interesting. Were they really AI? Well, if you look at machine learning, then it's a subset of AI, but it's not really the same sort of AI that we would talk about now in terms of generative AI. It was simply looking at data, looking at what you were doing, and then applying some algorithms to it to work out what courses you may like next. We've all seen it. We've all done it. Now, those are beginning to phase out somewhat because what we're seeing is that a lot of sellers aren't following structured learning. So this becomes really interesting. Where we spent a lot of money building and curating platforms of learning, people don't necessarily want to have that in the way that we think we should deliver it to them, which is quite kind of fun and kind of a challenge at the same time. So what we're now beginning to try and work out is how do we best provide that training. And what's really interesting is the prevalence of true generative AI in creating the learning content. So you imagine organizations like Mentor Group have spent a long time with subject matter experts who can write really, really good training programs for our learners. But what's happening is AI's come along and said, well, actually, I could do that for you. And so you go and ask ChatGPT, train me on how to negotiate. And you know what? It'll do a not bad job, which is interesting. So the whole concept of how we train is beginning to change because it can be powered by this technology in the background. However, the biggest challenge with that is the consistency and accuracy. So if you and I, Simon, in ChatGPT put in exactly the same prompt, train me how to negotiate, you'll get two different answers.
Yeah.
So in an organization, when you're trying to provide consistency and create a way of negotiating, it becomes very, very difficult to do using GPT. But GPT can power the learning in the first place. There's been some great research. If you haven't heard of her, or you haven't checked her out, go and check out Dr. Philippa Hardman and her research. Her research has recently shown that if I took three different types of people, an instructional designer, a novice with AI, and an instructional designer with AI, the person that comes last is the instructional designer. Their outcomes were the worst. So somebody with next to no instructional design knowledge at all, but with AI can build a significantly better program than somebody who's got years of instructional design, which is
Wow.
scary,
Yeah.
right? Now, of course, if you put someone who's an expert and they've got experience with AI and they're using it properly, the results are off the chart. So we've got this opportunity now to start really upping our game in terms of what our instructional design looks like and the course content. Now, apart from building courses, what I'm seeing as a big shift towards is practical application of learning. So if you imagine what I just said, we can assume that content is being created semi on the fly using AI. Where does the value of sales training come in? Well, the sales training value for me comes in to the application of what you just learned. Prove to me that you can actually go and do it before you meet with my customer. And I've heard you say it many times, Simon. I've used it myself. We create an analogy between sales and high performance sport, whether that's soccer, football, motorsport. We're always making that same analogy. The big difference between sales and high performing sports is we spend more time on the field than we do practicing, whilst real sports players spend more time practicing than they do on the field. And the results are very different. So my view and my passion and my focus recently has been how do we develop a culture and tools to help people practice in a safe way to enable them so they don't meet and they're not practicing on customers, like I said before, because
You
that's a
said,
bad
yeah.
idea.
Yeah, because I mean, you mentioned that, I mean, obviously, hostage negotiation, that would not be you wouldn't necessarily want to do your first. But you also, I mean, okay, equally, the stakes are not as high, but financially, a big contract or a big sale, a $10 million enterprise level sale,
Yeah,
or going into the C suite for the
yeah.
first time, you
Mhm.
probably don't want to practice on the CTO because
Yeah.
you've probably got 5 minutes before he or she decides whether or not to carry on the meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. And often we as sellers get quite arrogant to say we know what we're doing. We've done it before. I've done many a negotiation. I'm happy. Yet they'll run into a personality, a persona that they're not used to, and they
Mm,
fall flat on their face. And I'll give a really good example. We've just delivered, well, actually, we're in the middle of delivering a very powerful virtual reality training program. And what this
yeah,
does is allow people to go and experience what it feels like, because it's VR, you get the emotional connection, which is something that is unique to in my feeling about VR is its unique ability to create an emotional connection, right? And what you do is you experience selling to different personas. And what's interesting is it's designed for high value sellers. And by definition, a high value seller is not going to be someone who's new in the business. They've been here a
yeah.
long time, right? They've worked their way up to these big deals. Yet time and time and time again, they are falling down on some very basic principles. And in some situations, they start to learn that they're really good with a CTO, they are appalling with a CFO.
Yeah.
And so they suddenly realize that whilst they're really good at negotiation, they're only good at negotiation in one or two dimensions. And what we're trying to do is create people who've got more dimensions, more flexibility, which is important for the future of selling because who we're selling to is changing as well.
It's very much, I mean, a theme I've seen in a number of industries. So, say, working in medical technology, their traditional stakeholder base has been clinicians, doctors,
Yeah.
nurses, etc., so on and so forth. They're very comfortable in that environment, very good talking about clinical value.
Right.
But when the buying authority starts to shift to hospital management or more to procurement and away from the clinical user,
Yep.
they're well outside their comfort zone. And in IT, the classic stakeholder base is within the IT department, but all that Gartner research is a lot of the money is outside of the IT department, and
Absolutely right.
there's a lot of different people. So I guess, and I know, and I've participated, I've tried out some of your VR simulations, and it is, there's an actor there playing that part, and it is absolutely immersive, isn't it? Because
That's
also
the word that they use. Yeah.
yeah, you can't be distracted at all. There's no,
It's not like you can't check your email whilst you've
no,
got it on, which is quite convenient. But the other thing that we do is we test the boundaries of their experience working under pressure. Because if you think about most sales training, how do we do these sorts of exercises? We tend to do role play of some description,
yeah,
and role play is not actually very realistic in reality. What we're able to do with the VR is to push them to suddenly they're dealing with an emotional and sometimes angry customer.
yeah,
Most sellers are not equipped with that. They're not used to it. They've never seen it before. So they freeze or they fight or whatever they want to do, but they don't react in a great way. So again, what we're trying to do with this sort of technology is give them that muscle memory, so that when they do come against it, they know exactly
yeah.
how they're going to respond.
And also heavy kind of one, it's very interactive and application based
It
in
is.
the session, but then also they can transfer that learning back into real life customers as
Oh,
well.
well,
So
that's the
that's
whole
the
point of it. The whole point of it was to you bring a customer with you in mind, and you apply what you've learned to that customer. And we've had some amazing ROI stories. One of them was they bought in a $1 million deal and came out the other end with a $12 million deal. That level of ROI is frankly outrageous for any sort
yes,
of training program.
yeah,
Outrageous, right?
yeah,
Um,
yeah. That's a ten
and
times.
Right. Well, yeah, and but it shows what can happen, and that's interesting because when you're talking about long in tenure sellers, the thing we get pushed back a lot is, well, what can you teach me? I've been here,
Yeah,
seen it, done it. So
yeah,
having something else to engage them with, to push those boundaries, and we're going to take that upper level. So the next generation of VR training for us is collaborative VR training. So in the situation where what we find ourselves with now is lots of selling is done in groups collaboratively.
yeah.
So you might meet the CTO with someone from pre-sales with a subject matter expert. Well, when was the last time the three of you practiced doing your pitch to an individual or
Yes,
dealing who says what and when? Who cuts over who? Well, this new collaborative VR allows all of you to be in the same experience at the same time. Now, it can be done remotely, so you can all be connected. You don't have to be in the same place, thankfully, and have a really great experience. So imagine building virtual war rooms. I hate the term war room, but people are
yeah,
familiar with the term, or doing some sort of collaborative presentation to do with maybe a ten. What's the word I'm looking for? When you apply for a contract. My
oh,
brain.
sales pitch or
No, no,
presentation
no,
or
no, no, no.
tender.
When tender, a tender is the word I
Tender,
want.
yeah, tender.
I couldn't find. I've just turned 50, Simon, and you can absolutely tell.
Hey, listen, don't you worry, James. Anyway. I'm not telling you how old I am next year, but let's just say you've got nothing to worry about, right? So, sorry, you were saying you're the tender piece.
Yeah, well, how often do we have to sell as a group in
Yeah,
one of those in a tender environment? We have to sell in a group, but we never practice it.
no,
We often think, oh well, I'll say this and you say that, but we never get to it and do it together. Or very, very few people. I've seen a few people do it.
yeah, because yeah, I mean, selling used to be awful generalization. Used to be more of a solo sport, to pick
Yeah,
up on your elite sport analogy, particularly for larger scale B2B. It's a team
absolutely.
sport, right? It's
Yeah,
absolutely. And I've certainly done some work with a client of mine who they sort of do outsource recruitment and etc. and helping them with the pitch where they have to have their experts and their search consultants in the room as well. And you know, first time through, the pass of the ball from person to person during the pitch was awfully bad. The ball was being dropped, to continue the metaphor, because
Yeah.
they've never got in the same room as practice. But the VR allows them to get in the same room virtually
Yeah.
and kind of practice that.
The other thing that sometimes people don't appreciate is the people that you sell with change in front of a customer. I've
Yeah,
got a colleague, and I've worked with him for well over a decade, and I sold with him for the very first time about a year ago, and I was taken aback about how he changed. 'Cause I was used to one personality, and in
yeah,
front of the customer, he was a completely different person, and I was just like,
yeah.
"How do I deal with this?" It was like working with a stranger as opposed to someone I worked with for a decade. So anyway, all of these things, all these technologies are coming together. So you've got this combination of AI driven learning, lots and lots of practice. But I also do see the next phase of learning being around the micro learning piece
Mm,
connected with something. So contextualize. We are looking at, if you imagine, we haven't spoken about this, but we do some work with small action LLMs. So a LLM is a large language model, so ChatGPT sort of
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
But a small action LLM is one that only knows about a small amount of data. So it doesn't know about the weather, it doesn't know about Donald Trump, it doesn't know anything other than its particular area of focus. Now, where this can get really interesting with other AI technologies. You imagine if an AI is listening to a conversation, and then as you're talking, it's then saying, here's a bit of learning. Don't forget to apply this principle.
Mm.
In the moment, those things become really interesting. So training doesn't necessarily become an event, it becomes something that we're doing all of the time.
So literally on the sales floor,
Literally on the
integrated
sales.
in the
Yeah.
day-to-day activities that a seller might be
Absolutely.
doing.
Well, it morphs that actually into the conversation. So just like you and I having a conversation, it could be prompting you with, don't forget to mention this. You're at this stage. That was a good buying
Mm.
signal. Maybe rephrase that. So all of this coaching that's happening with time, because some of the technologies that we have, you're familiar with the likes of Gong, which is like an intent analysis. We have the reverse, which is looking at you as a seller and your pitching and your quality of what you're saying. So it can be measuring both what the intent is from the customer, then matching it with certain phrases to get past that. There's some very clever stuff coming down the line from really clever
Yeah.
stuff, but it changes how we do training. Rather than being what we've always done for decades, which is get everyone in a room and train them, becomes less important because learning is happening literally on the job. Now you
Yeah.
need to have the ability to do it before, but you also need to be able to practice that. So you're not reliant on the screens all the time, but they're there for prompts.
And I guess, if you look at classic, like Sir John Whitmore definition of coaching, raise awareness, generate responsibility. And, we all know how powerful coaching and sales coaching can be. But that sounds like it's achieving that awareness raising kind of in real time, not post call. And obviously,
Yep.
there's call and then there's post call coaching still, for
Yep.
kind of valuable thing. But so in terms of, say, coaching support for sellers going forward, and also I guess for managers who are coaching salespeople, what do you see as some of the
Well,
some of the tech that's going to do some of the heavy lifting?
a lot of what you just actually mentioned there is exactly right. So you've got the pre and post call coaching. What I see a lot of is probably 80% of that can be done now via AI. So you could specify what the outcomes need to be as an organization. You give it the parameters and it will coach you, and it does a very, very good job. I mean,
Mm,
really, really good job. But the where it needs to be sharpened, you can interject the sales manager coaching, the experience. It knows in theory, but there's nothing like a sales manager that can come alongside you and say, I've done this before. What worked last time was this.
yeah,
That's another level. But combining the two, so what the way that you phrase that, I think is really really good. Which is what's the heavy lifting. I look at the AI technologies as my assistant. They're doing the heavy lifting. I'm adding extra value on top of it because I'm
yeah,
not having to deal with the other stuff. So if you as a sales manager, and one of the challenges we all know, the sales managers are overwhelmed with work and they're asked to coach. Right now, you and I have had this debate. sales managers are not great coaches. They're great mentors, not great
Yeah.
coaches. But if the technology can do a lot of the coaching for them and they can come along and then say, sprinkle some magic from their experience on it, that is a good use of time because they can spend the rest of their time focusing on what they need to do as a manager.
Because I was listening on, totally different professional field, brain surgery, right? There were
Actually,
a piece of new technology that brain surgeons are able to access, and they're saying on the radio AI, which I understand you would always want to go, yeah, is it really? But and it's basically analysed a very rare operation that's done.
mm,
There've been about 10,000 of them done, but each individual surgeon will do it very, very rarely. But the tech has analysed and will suggest, based on the 10,000 it's got stored, this is probably and empowers the surgeon to make really good decisions. So I guess in your analogy there, the surgeon is sprinkling the magic dust on
exactly,
on
exactly
on the
right.
top,
Yeah.
but cannot possibly have that wealth of experience.
No.
It just doesn't happen, and they're saying the success rates have soared
Yeah,
as a
and
result.
we can already start to see that sellers who are using AI
Yeah,
as well are doing better. Now, there's a real danger though, Simon, as well. So one of the things that we're seeing more and more of is organizations putting in AI because they're putting in AI. Because if you don't put in AI, you're not going to get the investment, right? So these
yeah,
companies are coming up with these AI technologies, and a lot of them are saying, well, let the AI write the email to the customer for you. Okay, fine.
yeah,
And there's some clever stuff. It can go and have a look at previous buying histories and bits and pieces and curate an email. But what sellers aren't doing is then learning how to do really good prompt engineering around
yeah,
how to get a really good answer. So what then happens is we all sound the same. Now, you most people can recognize an AI voice pretty damn quickly. You can, I mean,
yeah.
there was some, what are the key words that tells you that you've used AI? Let's dive into. There's a classic, right?
Yes, yeah,
You go,
yeah,
oh yeah,
yeah,
you've been using GPT, which is fine in itself, but don't just copy and paste it. We've got to find our own voice in that. And again, that thing
yeah,
about let AI do the heavy lifting, but don't just press send. The danger is we're going to get a lot of people who will use the auto create features in a lot of this new tech, and they're just going to send generic messaging out, and it's going to land really badly with our customers. Because
yeah,
if you look at the research, the one thing that our customers want is personalization. They want to be
mm,
recognized as an individual. So as soon as we start to make things too generic and without our own voice, we're going to lose it. So if you remember the days when email was very, very, very prevalent, um, people started handwriting letters. The same sort of thing could start to happen where AI is going to get so prevalent, we're going to go, I'm not even going to touch AI. I'm going to have
yeah,
to start writing this. And it's always this pendulum swing between the two extremes, and eventually it will fall in the middle. But if I was to predict the number one sales training skill we will need to teach in the future, it is how to do good prompt engineering.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that is not easy.
Yeah, until the technology gets so smart, it'll take it'll take lazy prompts from us. But I mean, I think it's kind of like if you use it in a lazy way,
Yeah,
write me an email to James Barton,
yeah.
you'll kind of get a fairly rubbish response, won't you? I mean, it's when I look at
You
some of
get a
the
generic
prompts,
response. It won't be rubbish because actually it
yeah,
will probably do a better job. But the person next to you or your competition will be doing it in the same way. So
yeah,
you've got no differentiation. The sellers that can do really good prompts to create really good responses, now they're the ones that are going to do really well because they'll differentiate.
yes.
It's all about differentiation.
Fantastic. And I guess that sort of leads into my next question, which is, I guess, a broader question about the impact of some of the technological developments that are coming on the modern sales professional and how they can, leverage those to improve like personalization, relationship, but also productivity and or
Yeah. Yeah.
forecast accuracy or
Yeah.
etc. Pipeline
So
and so on and so forth.
you've hit on the number one problem that I'm seeing across all our customers is forecast accuracy.
Yeah.
It is absolutely the number one issue that I'm seeing everybody screaming and shouting about. Anyways, okay, so let's talk about some productivity gains. And apart from the ability to quickly write emails, some other areas that I've seen of interest, and some of your listeners may hate me for this one, but it's the destruction or the democratization of data and the removal of RevOps. So
Mm.
RevOps has had a very significant growth curve over the last few years. Everything is about being RevOps. The future of selling is RevOps, 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 RevOps. And actually, I'm seeing new technologies, and we've got one that we're working with, which is democratizing RevOps. So what that means is, it's a great word, James. So what? Um, Imagine you've got ChatGPT. You can talk to it in plain English, and it gives you a plain English response back. But what if you did that, but rather than it thinking about sales content, it did it with data? So you, as a seller, could say, "Tell me my most underperforming customer and the 5 reasons why they haven't bought previously." Making that statement up, it would then give you that response in that quicker time. So
Yeah.
you've now got huge amounts of agility as a seller to go and use that data to go and improve what you do as a salesperson. That can then move up to sales managers. Sales managers can say, "Where's my underperforming segmentation? Compare my top seller from my worst seller. Where are the gaps?" That you can even use some of the other areas I'm using AI for now is to take a program and say, um, "Here is a training program. Here are 5 different personas. From those 5 personas, where is my gap? What's missing from the sales training?" So using it as a bit of peer analysis. But I just went back onto the previous one. So keep going with the one around sellers. So you've got this issue of democratization of data, and I really believe the future sellers have to be data driven. They have
Yeah.
to be data literate. Now, what's getting in the way of data literacy training is we are struggling to train them how to be technical, because we're asking them to write SQL code or think like a programmer. We don't need to anymore. We can just get them to ask the question in plain English, and they get the answer back
Yeah.
instantly. That changes the game for sellers in a very profound way if they've got the ability to understand what they're seeing. So that what we talk about is data to insight to action. Now, data is, we've got more data than we can shake a stick at, right? Insight is found by asking great questions. Where the skill will then be is what actions you're going to take on the back of those insights, which is really very powerful. The other productivity thing that I'm seeing is we spoke before the call about transcriptions and how you can transcribe text. Well, one of the key problems we've got with things like CRM adoption is how do we get data into the system, because nobody likes entering CRM data. Everyone hates it. I've just been to the customer. "Oh, I've got to go and update my CRM records." You know, the CRO's on your back saying, "Update your forecast." Well, what if you can talk to something and it then uploaded the content for you into CRM? Now that's a productivity gain and a removal of blocker around CRM, and the quality of all your data goes up at the same time. So those sorts of things is what I'm saying. There's no death of the CRM. I wish I could say CRMs are dead. They are not. They are very, very prevalent, and they're very, very powerful. I'm seeing a couple of new breeds CRMs which are much more focused, less around a process and more focused around what I'm seeing now as what selling is.
Yeah.
So it's not what's the next step, and it's very binary, very linear. I'm seeing some that are much more flexible, others that have got some elements of the training stuff built into it as well. Most of them have AI to say, "I recommend you do this next," or that kind of
Yes.
good stuff. I mean, that's kind of part of the course now. But I think they're going to play a bigger and bigger part of this data powered seller that I
Yeah.
see as being the future.
So I guess that's sort of onto the last kind of area which we sort of started to move into is the sort of sales tech stack of the future. So obviously CRM used to sit very firmly in that as it
Yeah,
for many
yeah,
organisations. Yeah, and also still not very well used in adoption is still very 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 very
yeah,
poor.
yeah.
So I guess what I'm hearing is CRM, but something that is going to do something in the tech stack that's going to take care of that very important data analytical
Well, yeah,
aspect.
you've got a couple of bits there, Simon. So um, CRM hasn't delivered the results that it promised, mainly because sellers haven't used it properly.
Yeah.
And that's because it's always been considered to be a sales admin function as opposed to something that is useful to sellers.
Yeah.
Now, when it's used properly and the seller understands how to use it, it becomes absolutely indispensable as a tool to help you sell,
Yeah.
and it does the back end and the administration. Most companies put it in administration first, results other end. Please fill in a million different fields so I get the right data. Now, if you can talk to it and it fills all those fields in for the admin jockeys and bits and pieces, but it also provides us with great data that helps us sell, that's a win-win in my book. So
Yeah.
you still got CRM, still a very central function, but what you're seeing AI do is automate data input, data processing and analysis, and then data next steps. So what you're then beginning to see is where we add value as sellers is at that 10% of the sales cycle. Now we know that the whole sales process has changed. Where we were involved as sellers really early doors, we're getting in very, very late. As far as 90% through the selling process, some of the latest stuff that I've read. I mean, there's some stuff about 83 and 84. It's well up to 90% now. So we need to be looking at the data and say, where can I add value at 90% of the sales journey? Because it's different about when you did it at 30%.
Yeah.
And we have to understand that as sellers, otherwise we're going to miss the mark.
I mean, I guess in the future, if the pain of data entry
Yep.
and also the pay for a seller and
Yep.
the pain of the analysis, or probably not the analysis, being asked to provide reporting over and
Yep.
above they're the things that frustrate them enormously.
Yeah.
You tell me off for not putting it in, then I put it in, then you ask me to do ad hoc reporting. That sort of starts to frustrate. So
Yeah.
if that's taken care of and takes it to a whole new level of accuracy and insight,
Yes.
sellers are going to potentially going to actually love CRM
Yeah.
rather than the
Yeah,
opposite.
and again, go back to what I was talking about in terms of that technology that's a lot like GPT, but for data. You're no longer restricted by the reports given to you by the organization. You can go completely however you want to be.
Yeah.
You can be really curious about your data. And I've worked with data analytics and visualization companies for years, and they talk about the power of the grey. And often the greatest insights are not the things that we're reporting on. They're looking at when someone gets curious and thinks, well, what if this and that equal together? And because this technology can sit across multiple different data sources, you really can generate some very, very powerful insights that can genuinely change your sales game. But what you've got to do is remove yourself from where you thought you were as a seller. And I know that a lot of what we think at our age, Simon, what we thought was our uniqueness as sellers has changed, and we have to be okay with that value changing to something else. The younger
Yeah.
generation, they're already there.
But they
Absolutely.
don't they don't know they
They don't
don't
know
know a
different.
world
But
without, do they? So
what's stopping us is our egos. Well, they can't buy without me. They can, and they will.
yes. Yes. Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
where do we add value? And
Yeah.
so that's the bit that I'm also interested in, is making sure that that the maturer sellers are seeing this technology as enabling and not disabling, because there's so much fear around AI. It's going to take my job and all that kind of stuff, and all technology is going to take my job. It's not true. It's going to
Yeah.
change your job, but it's going to allow you to do something much more interesting.
We interviewed Julie Holmes, who's a speaker, a friend of mine, very up on AI, and we asked her, the thing sellers are always going to ask, will my job be taken away by AI? And I don't think she's the first person to have said it, but she adapted it for sellers, and she said, no, AI will not take your job, but somebody using AI will
Well,
definitely take your job. So I think that was
yeah.
that,
And well, this goes back to what I was saying about instructional design. The same will be true for sellers. Sellers
yeah,
that are not using AI will be the weakest, and the
yeah.
novice is using AI. The people that have just come out of school will be outperforming our long tenured experienced salespeople.
But it's going to
And
flatten the learning curve, isn't it, to some degree, right?
yeah,
You're,
it's go back to that word democratization or normalization. It is completely leveling the playing field, and that is great for a number of economies and areas of society which haven't had access to this. And one of my passions is to try and to bring the profession of selling back to its true meaning, because it's been butchered over the years to be sellers have a bad reputation. And
Yes.
actually, we should and do often provide a very, very valuable service. Without sales and without selling, nothing in this world would happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very fond of saying, if nobody sells something, nothing kind of happens. But we shall probably explore this topic, because we've got 2 interviews for you with James, and the second one, Sales is Dead, Evolving Sales Strategies, Saying Goodbye to Old Techniques. Make sure you check that one out as well. Sales Chat Show, you'll find all our episodes on all of your major podcasts, all of the major podcast platforms, or at our website, saleschatshow.com. But James, if people want to get in touch with you, or they want to learn more about Mentor Group, point them in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I am on LinkedIn, so help me out. You normally find me as James A. Barton, and the reason why the A is there is very silly. If you search for James Barton, you'll find that I'm an axe murderer from Emmerdale Farm. So I have to put the A in it to make sure people find me. So
that's a very alarming alter ego that you've got out there. The axe murderer from. So if you look for James A. Barton on LinkedIn.
Or you're very welcome to email me, james.barton@mentorgroup.com.
Fantastic.
I'm very open to any conversation. Love to talk about these things. So very happy to speak.
That is wonderful. And so that would therefore be mentorgroup.com as the website if they want to take a look there as well.
Absolutely correct. Thank you, Simon.
Wonderful, James. Thank you very much for that. So make sure you check out James's other session that we've got coming up. And you'll find there's about 300 or so episodes in the saleschatshow.com back catalogue. As I've said before, all the major podcast platforms, or take a look at saleschatshow.com. You'll see them all listed there. So until then, on behalf of everybody at the Sales Chat Show, we would like to just wish you good luck and good selling, folks. You have been listening to an episode of the Sales Chat Show. To stream or download a host of further free episodes that will power your sales success, please visit saleschatshow.com. Thank you very much for listening to this episode, and from everyone here at the Sales Chat Show, we'd like to wish you good luck and good selling.